Hi folks, MKC here. Today I will introduce you to the Lodash library and show you 5 utility functions that will help you to deal with common programming tasks in JavaScript without reinventing the wheel. If Lodash is something completely new to you, let's say it's a Tailwind CSS but for JavaScript. It contains more than 200 utility functions that help you to deal with common programming tasks. Of course, this library is actually a lot older and more popular than Tailwind. It's one of the most popular NPM packages with 47 million weekly downloads. As you can see, the latest version of Lodash was released 2 years ago. The first version was released 10 years ago in 2012. This is a lot of time in JavaScript world, which means Lodash has a high quality and high stability. We can expect this library will stay with us for a lot of time, and its API is really stable. It won't change every month, every week, so it doesn't have too much cost of maintenance, of migrating to new major versions. And what is also important, each Lodash function was developed with modularity and performance in mind. Okay, after this short introduction, we are ready to jump into the code. Stay till the end because I will show you how to properly import Lodash into your project so your bundle size is not bigger than needed. Okay, so we will work on this simple Przemek object. It contains basic data about co-host of this channel, Przemek Smyddek. It would be great if I could copy or clone real Przemek, but now let's stay with copying the Przemek object. This is something that we of course can do in JavaScript, but it's not so easy in vanilla JavaScript. Let me show you why. So all of the basic intuitive approaches to copying objects in JavaScript lead to creating of a shallow copy. This means we will get the same references to the nested objects, for example. This is really dangerous for integrity of our data. We don't want to make it happen. So let's declare Przemek clone, and we will do the most basic thing, which is just assign Przemek to Przemek clone. But if you want to change his employer, let's say Przemek makes a comeback to smart recruiters. Okay, now let's log Przemek clone, of course after the reassignment, and see in our console what's happening. Okay, we made the change, but this is not the only change that we made. Another change is in the Przemek object, something that we didn't want to do. Let's see. Przemek also was moved to smart recruiters, not only his clone. This is caused by the shallow copy. The employer object, we have the same reference in the clone and in the Przemek. This is how JavaScript works, and to bypass it, we would have to use spread operator, but spread all of the nested objects as well. This won't work. This will lead to the same result as in the beginning. What we would have to do is to also spread the Przemek employer. And right now, okay, here's the mistake. Let's see. And as you can see, now Przemek wasn't affected, just the Przemek clone. But if you would have more nested objects or some deep nesting, this wouldn't be that handy anymore. Okay, and here comes the Lodash with the first function that I wanted to show you. Is called cloneDeep, and all that we have to do is to just invoke it, pass Przemek as an argument, and we will see that everything is okay. Przemek is not affected by the change, the clone is, and we just needed one line, no matter how complex the Przemek object would be. So cloneDeep is great to create deep clones without these problematic references in the nested objects. But you could say, Marcin, we don't need Lodash for this because we can use JSON parse and JSON stringify combo. And as you can see, this would actually work properly, same as cloneDeep. But let's see what happens if I add a method to this object. As you can see, Przemek object has such method, but the Przemek clone hasn't. This is because methods are not supported by JSON, similarly to sets, map, regex, and a lot of different values that your object can contain. If you use JSON parse, JSON stringify to create a deep clone, you will lose all of these properties. This approach is only okay if you are sure that your object will only contain primitive values. If you want to stay safe, if you know that your objects are complex, you should use cloneDeep from Lodash. Okay, another method that I want to show you is isEqual. This would actually help us detect the problem with JSON parse JSON stringify. Let's ensure that those objects are equal. Przemek is equal Przemek clone. We will invoke isEqual Przemek clone. Let's delete this one and let's see. It's false right now, but we also want to delete the reassignment of employer and still will be on false. Why? Because we lose change employer method. If we go back to cloneDeep, we will actually get true. So isEqual is a great way to compare objects. No easy way to do this in vanilla.js. To compare to object JSON stringify is also not that great, because if we change order of properties which are not guaranteed in JavaScript, we will get false negative that they are not equal just because the order is not the same, but all of the values and all of the properties would be the same still. So isEqual, great function from Lodash. The next function that I want to show you is isEmpty. It helps us to detect if object, array-like structure or collection is empty. This is useful before we initialize our data structure, before we get some data from API. We want to ensure if our container is empty, we don't have data there. If that's the case, we will get it from the server or from the DB. As you can see here, we have like all of the examples of empty structures and field structures. We can see that it properly detects the state for object, for an array, for a set, for a map, also for null and undefined. If something is not iterable, if something is not an object, it's not a collection, it will also be detected as empty. We can see that those comments are true because we are also making the console log. So you have the proof here. Of course, all of this is doable in JavaScript, but for each type of object, array-like structure, collection, you have to do it in another way. For objects, you have to check length of properties. For array, you have checked the length. For set, you have to check the size. So a lot of different ways. Here we have one interface, one method to rule them all. This is really handy. You don't also have to worry about checking the size or length of null or undefined. This is also taken care of. Okay, now we will talk about get and set methods. So let's say we get this data from some API. And sometimes this API, if it has bandwidth, if it's not overloaded, it will also return industry property, which contains a name, the same streaming, and a niche, which same sports. Okay, but this is not always there. Sometimes API provide this data, sometimes not. And this is kinda tricky for us because we want to, for example, read this data and use it somewhere, but we are not sure if it's always there. To get, for example, the name of the industry, we can use the Lodash get method. How to do this is to just pass the Przemek and then in a string say that we want an industry and its name. If it's not there, we will provide the default. We will do a console log of this one. And as you can see, we get the streaming, we get the default value, because if we provide the industry and let's say something random here, something random, we also have a similar method which is called set. Let's import it and see how it works. So as you can see, it actually has set the value of the industry to streaming, This is what we have here. It will overwritten the something random, but even if this doesn't exist, we will have the same result. We don't have to worry about industry property existing. Set will create it for us and assign streaming to the name. And this is the case, as you can see down below. For the get, we have actually an alternative in modern JavaScript. You can use optional chaining with nullish coalescing to get a value or return a default if it doesn't exist. But still, Lodash get is more approachable, easier to read, easier to understand, so I would continue to use it. The last method that I want to show you is called deburr, and it helps you with removing diacritical signs from your strings. It's really important if you actually do some search, if you want find some object. So if people want to find Przemek by his city, it's called Bielsko-Biała, and it contains this diacritical sign. Let's say someone will write the same city name but without this diacritical sign. And if we don't use the deburr, we won't detect a match. So what we want to do here is to actually get rid of this diacritical sign when comparing with the city query. This will make our matching algorithm more reliable no matter the internationalization. We have a lot of languages, a lot of diacritical signs. Doing search, taking those into account is almost impossible. We will get too much false negatives. Deburr is really handy here. If you can see in the console, we actually get a match. If we remove the deburr, we won't have matches anymore. Okay, and these are all of the 5 methods that I want to show in this video. I have 5 more for the part 2 of our Lodash exploration, but before we wrap this up, I want to also talk to you about how to properly import Lodash into your codebase so you won't increase the bundle size in an unneeded manner. So what is important is to actually use Lodash ES package. No just Lodash, but Lodash ES. The difference between those two is that Lodash is exported in CommonJS format, which is suited only for Node.js. So if you want to use it in your frontend application, you need ES modules because these are supported by the browser. Of course, if you use bundles like Webpack, Rollup, Vite, they will deal with CommonJS for you. But if you have a library in ES modules package, it will be faster. And what is more important, the tree shaking mechanism will for sure work properly. Import like this from Lodash ES, we use a named import of a given function that we want to use. This for sure will make the Lodash library tree shakeable, and the rest of the library that we don't use won't be included in our end bundle that we ship to our customers. This is the best way to use Lodash in 2022. Thanks for your attention. I hope that you learned something new today. Please let me know in the comments if you use Lodash, do you like it, and what are the most useful functions in this library. If you liked the video, hit that like button for me, leave the subscription under the channel so you won't miss the part 2. Have a great day, have a great week, see you in the next video, bye bye.